might make a video on one of these soon. If you don't know what this is, you should, and if you don't, stay tuned, because I'm gonna show you how to use this for color correction. All right, let's get into this box. It's my dream camera, y'all. Come on. Dang. I got a lot of stuff going on in here on this workbench. Now, woo! Look at this thing. Ooh, ooh, she looks good. She looks good. This is my camera. When I said this is my dream camera, I'm not like unboxing a new camera. This is my C300 Mark III. I've had this camera for a long time. Recently dropped it in here in the studio and absolutely obliterated this whole corner. It busted this audio door off. It cracked the whole body here. This audio status programmable button was like shoved inside the body. The thing got jacked up, so I had to send it into Canon, and a few parts. Just had to replace a couple body panels. $530. This isn't an ad or anything, but sign up for Canon Professional Services because it'll save you a lot of money, a lot of headache. They took care of this really quick. If I'd have asked for it, they'd have sent me a loaner out in the meantime if I had any shoots that needed covered. But I have insurance and CPS, so yeah, insure your gear in one way or another, or in multiple ways. It's worth it. All right, let's talk about this thing. I don't need this anymore. Ugh. Let's talk about this thing right here. If you haven't figured out, that title of this video might have been a little clickbaity, but also a little bit true, which is the key to getting views on YouTube, apparently. When I say unboxing my dream camera, I did indeed do that. This is my dream camera. I did unbox it. However, I've owned this camera for, when did I get this? 2020, 2021? I wanted to take the opportunity and call this a long-term review. And I'm not really gonna cover the nuts and bolts. Like, if you wanna know the specs, go look at the specs. But I'm gonna talk about more of the kind of lived-in experience. I've shot hours upon hours, hundreds of hours on this camera, tons of projects. I've shot everything from documentary style stuff to some narrative short films to wedding films to social media content, to YouTube videos, all the way. I've shot vertical video on this thing. So I have a wide array of use cases and experiences to base this video on, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, because this camera, I don't know a lot of people that use this camera, and I don't know why, because it is so good. Getting into it, I'm just going to talk about a handful of things. If you want to see the nuts and bolts, go watch my other C300 Mark III video. I'll put it up here wherever those little iCards appear. I'll link it in the description, something. You'll be able to find it. It's been on my channel. It's been a couple years since I made that video, but all that stuff still applies, but that covers more the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts. What I want to talk about with this camera is the experience, the user experience of working with this camera is part of what makes it makes it my favorite camera that I've ever owned, that I've ever worked with. It just works. If you've ever worked with some other cinema cameras, it starts with R and ends with Ed. Red has gotten a lot better in recent years, but like particularly their DSMC2 stuff had some issues on the software side. And Blackmagic has always kind of been there. They've got some issues, and this just works. Like, I've never had it hiccup, not once, ever. And that's what you want in a professional tool like this, is something that just works every time you turn it on. So that's one thing. The other thing in terms of the usability experience is the form factor. This little cube-like camera, it's roughly kind of the same dimensions, width, height, length, which makes it really easy to rig. I can fly this camera. If I can find some of the BTS footage, I'll show it. I've flown this on an RS3 Pro, DJI RS3 Pro gimbal on a tilt-a-float Steadicam setup, basically making like a mini RE Trinity. This form factor is compact enough you can fly it on a DJI RS3 Pro, which is amazing for one, but for two, it's just easy to rig. You can tell they really thought out the layout of the camera for professional use, knowing that we are going to rig these cameras up in various different configurations, and they built it accordingly, which is incredible. Honestly, that's one of my number one gripes with Sony cameras is the form factor is just, I just don't like it. Obviously, Sony cameras create incredible images. If that's your flavor, awesome. I'm happy for you. But Sony camera form factor tends to be, they're kind of narrow and they're long. Honestly, to me, shooting with Sony cameras kind of feels like I'm shooting with like a camcorder. Or like an ENG camera, electronic news gathering camera. It doesn't feel like an inspiring tool to use, which in 2023, this is a matter of opinion. But for me, in 2023, where the specs of cameras are kind of equalized, they all have great specs, they all produce great images. How the tool makes you feel and if it inspires your creativity is one of the biggest differentiators that these cameras have from each other. Sony creates a great image. I don't really enjoy the process of shooting on Sony, so I don't shoot on Sony. Personally, I'll choose this camera, this one particularly, over a Sony, any Sony, 100% of the time. And when I say any Sony, I literally mean $50,000 Sony Venice. I would choose this camera over virtually every time. The next thing that has really, really stood out to me about this camera is the sensor performance. Now, this camera is the first one in Canon's lineup to have that DGO sensor, the dual gain output sensor. And what makes that so special is the only other people in the industry that do that is ARRI. ARRI and Canon have seemed to go this dual gain output, which is basically your sensor is simultaneously reading at a low ISO and a high ISO, one to maintain shadow detail and saturation in the low lights, and one to give you extended kind of range in the highlights. And then it combines those two into one really high dynamic range image. What makes that so special is because the sensor architecture matches very similar to how ARRI performs. You're able to match this camera to ARRI really, really well. And that's one of the reasons I say I'm going to be using this camera for a long time, probably well past its shelf life or kind of product cycle, is because if at some point I personally upgrade to be an ARRI owner operator and I need a B cam, like this is going to be a great B cam to have in house. Or if I need to rent an ARRI for a project and I need a B cam, this is going to be a great B cam and I own it. It's already in house. So it's really, really an incredible, versatile camera in that capacity. One other note about the sensor that I really, really love, it's a true 4K. It's not like a 6K sensor being downsampled to 4K. It's a true 4K sensor, and it's somewhat of a soft 4K. And the reason I like that is because in this age that we live in with lenses, all the lenses that we work with are just, not all of them, a lot of the lenses, especially on the lower end cinema lens range, they are really, really sharp. Like the lens that I shot that intro shot on, the Zine carbon fiber Cine Prime, that lens resolves, and this isn't just marketing material, it actually resolves 8K really, really well. It is a tack sharp lens. And I don't love that, especially even a lot of the photography lenses that we shoot video on these days. Like this is a Canon L series lens that I'm shooting this on. They're made to resolve photos, obviously. 30, 40, 50 megapixels is 50 megapixels, I think is 8K, give or take. So These lenses are made to resolve really high resolutions, and I don't love that really high tack sharp resolution digital sharpness look. And so having a sensor that takes the edge off of some of these really, really sharp lenses is something I personally like having. That's not, you know, for everybody. That might not be their preference, and that's totally fine. But for me, that's my preference. And 4K is totally enough. The original RELX and Mini is a 3.2K sensor, so that's not even a 4K sensor. It's a 3.2K sensor. So the 4K out of this resolution-wise is more than enough, and I very much enjoy the fact that it kind of helps soften up my images. And then lastly, this is again kind of a personal preference, but I like Canon's philosophy as a company when it comes to how they treat their professional users. Because at this point, I think this camera is 3 years old. I want to say I got it in 2020. That's when it was released and when I bought it. And 3 years would be a good life cycle for a camera in this day and age. But we're probably going to not see an update to the C300 model for another year or two at least. So I really like that. I really appreciate that Canon gives us, you know, 4, 5, 6 years between camera updates, because there's nothing worse than dropping 10 plus, you know, 15 plus $1,000 on a camera just to have a new one come out 8 months later and drive the value of your investment through the floor. Now, I'm going to own this camera until it's worth basically nothing anyway, so that doesn't matter as much to me. The actual value doesn't matter as much to me, but I do appreciate that Canon doesn't hit us over the head with the consumerism and with the FOMO of needing the latest and greatest, because they don't update their professional cinema line all that regularly. I just like that. As a philosophy coming from a company, I don't like it when companies hit us over the head with updated versions of their cameras every year to 18 months. It just gets exhausting to try and keep up with it. So that's kind of my rundown. So 30-second sort of synopsis here. The Canon C300 Mark III is a great camera. If you have $8,000 or $9,000 to invest in a camera, you should seriously look at this one. Even if you have $15,000 to $20,000 to invest in a camera, I would still look at this compared to some of those $15,000 and $20,000, $25,000 options. If you're looking at a Super 35 version of the red v-raptor, I would seriously look at the Canon C300 Mark III. You know, it just performs. It just works. It does everything you ask it to. It's nice. It's compact. I can fly it on a tiny little DJI RS3 Pro gimbal. I could maybe fit it on an RS2. I don't know. I've never tried. But it's a great camera. I would seriously consider looking at this camera if you're in the market for a cinema camera. Anything else? I don't think so. Huge thanks to everybody showing up on that last video that I posted and supporting it. It has been my #1 performing video that I've ever posted on my channel by like a long shot, which is super cool. So I appreciate the love. I appreciate the support. And yeah, I'd like to keep it going. So if you got any value out of this video, go ahead, like and subscribe. And again, I said this a couple videos ago. What subscribing does for me is my singular goal with this YouTube channel is to kind of communicate my experience and what I've learned over the years of being a cinematographer and running my own business, and taking that and relaying it to you in a way that might be helpful, that could save you time and money in your own business, or even if you're just a hobbyist and you want to create better videos of your family vacation. So if you found any value in this video, go ahead and subscribe if you would like to see more, because that tells me that there's people watching who did enjoy it, that did get something valuable out of it, and do want to see more. It creates that positive feedback loop to let me know I'm not just wasting my time here. So yeah, like it, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff if you're feeling saucy, if you're feeling awesome. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. I have no idea when my next video is going to be. I'm kind of on a roll here, so we'll see what happens in in the meantime, I don't have a sign off, so bye.